Welcome to a special edition of What Happened on Saturday with Marlon Kerner. And our guest today, familiar face to all of Bills Mafia, hopefully to some of the Ohio State fans that we have tuning in, Jerry Ostrowski, former guard tackle offensive lineman at Tulsa University, and then for the Buffalo Bills. Marlon, our show is called What Happened on Saturday, but we really should call it What the F Happened Sunday. Sunday morning, noon. Let's lay this out, right? Like everybody watching this at this point knows the 4 teams that made the playoff.
Right.
We invited Jerry to come on.
In case they didn't know who made the playoffs.
Yeah,
in case they didn't know.
So, Jerry, we invited you on, and we'll kind of give you the floor first. You definitely came in strong on Twitter. Just give us your thoughts. Give us your thoughts on the top 4 and kind of where we landed, where we did.
I kind of subscribe to the Dave Chappelle theory that, Twitter's kind of like a bathroom wall, man. You just throw stuff up there and see what sticks, right? No, I don't understand. I mean, I do understand it. And if anybody questions why Alabama was in the 4, today they came out and somebody crunched the numbers, and basically ESPN saved themselves, or the selection committee saved ESPN $150 million in ad revenue and views and all those things by picking Alabama in the Final 4. And I guess my biggest thing is that I understand some teams might be better than others, all those different things. But you know what? That's why you play all these regular season games, and that's why you have all this competition. I mean, and I'm gonna make Marlon excited when I say this. It's like, so what's to say that Ohio State wasn't one of the best 4 teams? I mean, I understand they got beat by Michigan, but why are they not one of the best 4 teams? Or even Georgia? I mean, you could say that Georgia, they got beat by Bama. They should be one of the best 4 teams because they've been the number one ranked team all year long. So, but the biggest problem I have with college sports right now is that we have taken the onus away from doing things the right way. And when I say that, what I mean is this is a team in Florida State that went undefeated, won their conference, and did things the right way. And when you do things the right way and you have success, you should be rewarded for it. And do I think Alabama face-to-face with Florida State right now probably wins? I don't know. I guess you could say probably so. Or at least I'd say they have an advantage because of the quarterback position, which the selection committee let us know about. But the thing is this. Alabama has a loss. And they lost to Texas early in the year at home. Florida State does not. And now you're penalizing kids in a program for doing things the right way. And that's what I have a problem with. We want to reward other things instead of rewarding what we should reward, which is a job properly done. And right now, college football is just an absolute mess.
Marlon,
I agree.
What do you think, Marlon?
I mean, look, I agree. College football is a mess. I 100% agree that Florida State got hosed in a situation, but I also predicted that they were going to get screwed. Like I saw this coming. You could see the handwriting on the wall. If we're going to be fair, the committee over the course of the years have always been bailed out, right? There's always been a conference champion that lost that nobody expected to lose. Like they never really had to put themselves in a situation where they had to choose the 4 best teams out of 5 teams, right? So you always got bailed out. If you look at the history of the selection committee, they've always skewed SEC, Big Ten, ACC, and then it's always been a toss-up between the Big 12 and then sometimes the ACC, right? Because, I mean, you could say ACC is third, but really it's always been that coin toss between the Big 12 and the ACC. They really didn't care about anybody else and the Pac-12, right? Like, that was kind of like the Pac-12 was always kind of like the redhead stepchild, always kind of left out. Somebody always ended up losing. You would have had the scenario play out last year had USC won. Then you would have like, okay, is USC in, USC out? Nope. So they always got bailed out. And what they've been doing as of late is really going towards dollars and cents and viewership. More importantly, viewership and ratings, because really what they want is they want people to tune in and watch the games. Like that was the whole model behind this is we want to take the advantage of having other bowl games and bringing them in and then saying we're going to create this playoff system. But really, they just want people to watch. So you want the fan base of Alabama. You always want Ohio State's fan base because we travel. And if you look at some of the things, I think Ohio State, Michigan had 19 million people tune in and watch it. Like, that's a crazy number
Yeah.
to think about. So you always want to have one of those two teams. That's why you always get a Big Ten representative, because you know it's either going to be Ohio State or Michigan, and their fans are always going to tune in and watch their game.
Right.
So when I looked at Florida State, I mean, you already mentioned the amount of money that Disney saved by putting Alabama in, but I also want to throw out the fact that they also just signed a 10-year, $3 billion deal to broadcast all SEC games starting next season. So there was no way an SEC team was going to get left out. And you're right, like Florida State, their players did everything. But when you look at it, I thought the best case for Florida State to make it in is they needed to blow Louisville out. And really what happened was there was a travesty in that Jordan Travis gets injured. Their backup quarterback, you didn't see too much drop off with the offense. You expected to see them kind of be a little stagnant until they got used to his voice, his voice inflection, how he does the cadence. He can get some more continuity with his receivers. But when you had him go out and you have a dude who really didn't take too many snaps, like, and they still won the game, I was like,
True
yeah, they're not
freshman.
in. Like, I'm like, they're not going. I mean, unfortunately, they're not getting in. I texted Josh like, hey, listen, if I'm the committee, here's what it's going to look like. Unfortunately, you couldn't leave Texas out of it because they beat Bama in a head-to-head, and so you're always going to have that argument of, well, why did Alabama get over Texas when they lost to Texas? Like, how can you rank them? So they can't leapfrog them. So that was one of those crazy scenarios where you're just like, wow, like Florida State did everything that you did. And I'll take the other side of it. Like you mentioned that you're supposed to be rewarded for doing everything right. This is an example of where, you know, if you're a dad, you can also tell your kids, hey, listen, sometimes you can do everything right. You can do everything you're supposed to do. You can do everything in your power, and it's still not going to turn out right for you. And in Florida State's case, they did everything in their power. They won every game. They put in front of them, hey, it doesn't matter. We didn't pick the schedule as players. We just go out and win. They did everything they were supposed to do on the field, and they still, for lack of a better term, got hosed because of the way the people in the room are subjective. The way you have people with no career, there's really no clear criteria of what we're judging on. Like, sometimes it's eye tests, sometimes it's strength of schedule and who you beat when you beat them. Sometimes it's okay, it's this, it's that. When you look at it, Georgia could have been, right to your point, Georgia could have been argued as should they be in there. Out. I mean, Ohio State was out. I think once we lost, we're out. Like we got to 11-1. We're not going to have as many games. I didn't even put us there. I had us at 7. I was like, we're done with that. But yeah, it was a crazy Sunday to unfold.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I will never ever forgive Auburn. I will never forgive Auburn because this whole thing is here because of Auburn, right?
Right.
We can't defend on 4th and 31. But no, I think
31, 7 points with like 30 seconds left in the game. Like, how do you let the dude get behind you and then box you out like that? That right there is a travesty behind us. Of like, look, everybody's like, prevent, don't let anybody get behind you. You did. Okay, game over.
I think you guys can maybe add a unique perspective to this as former players, as college athletes, and then as NFL guys. If you're a Florida State player, are you hurt, disgusted, angry, all of the above? Like, how do you even get up for this bowl game? Do you care? Like, how do you even bounce back from this?
Well, I think if you want this thing to continue and you want to validate the fact that you should be in the 4, you need to go out and play Georgia and beat them. Okay, you need to make people think. You've got to.
Absolutely.
So if you want to validate this season, this 12-0 season, and you want to validate the message that you've put out, your president, your AD, the head coach, and I know Mike Norvell personally. He's a good friend of mine, and he's a great dude. He's worked his rear end off to get to where he is, and his emotions were real. I know how he is as a person, and I feel bad for him. But if you want to validate all these things, then you need to go out and play Georgia, and you need to beat them. And you know, it's one of these things where I know Florida State's got a couple of first-round guys on defense or whatever, and there's always that thing: should I play? Should I not play? Man, these guys, I don't think you're going to see a bunch of dudes jump in the portal. I think these guys are ready to go. They're pissed. They're motivated, and they want to play. So if you want to validate this thing in this season you just had, then you go play Georgia and you go beat them in the Orange Bowl, and then you can do like UCF and celebrate your fake national championship if you want, I guess. I don't know. But no, seriously, that's what you need to do. You need to get focused and ready to play Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say it any better. Like, I don't think they walk into this game thinking, man, we got hosed. Like, yeah, the initial response when you saw how it played out, the disappointment's there. You can take up until about now, like, right? Like, you know what? If you want to take a little bit longer, fine. If you want to take up until the end of the week and kind of say, I'm done with it once we get through finals, so be it. Like, you can mope around, like, we got screwed out of this one. Okay, fine. Now we got to go play a football game. And what better way than to go say, okay, listen, Georgia was ranked #1 for a while, and everyone was there. That was the pre-consensus best team in the nation, 2-time defending national champion, 29-game win streak until that came to an end on Saturday. So yeah, I mean, you go beat them. Now the issue is who's all playing. Like, that's always going to be the question.
Right.
If there's guys that know they're leaving and going to the NFL, then why are they playing in this game? Like, what does it matter? Because there's nothing else after this. And so those are conversations that Coach Norvell is going to have with those players individually, one-on-one, and then with the leadership team. And they have to talk it through. Like, listen, we have an amazing opportunity to build upon something for next year, because to the point of we know that it's going to 12. Now you will play. It doesn't really matter where you get slotted starting next season. Like, you just need to go ahead and take care of business. So that 13-0 record this year, you just building momentum. Like, let's build momentum and continuity so that we can get back there. You won't have Jordan Travis. So you're going to have 2 young quarterbacks that are going to be in the system. They're going to get some valuable reps against a really quality opponent and a good defense. And it should be a fun game to watch. It could be one of those. It's one of those games where it could be a very low scoring. It could be a 17-14 game with the way both those defenses play. Because the one thing that I can respect out of through all the chaos, through all the injury that Florida State had, their defense came and played week in, week out. And they have some legit stars on that defense side of the ball. And if they all show up, they can make life crazy for Georgia and that offense and what they want to do. But, you know, you've got a little bit of time. Guys can get healthy. They're going to have a little bit of time off to get little nicks and bruises taken care of. You won't get Jordan Travis back for Florida State, but you're going to get your quarterback out of the concussion protocol. You're going to be able to come up with a really good game plan and take some of what Alabama did to render their run game ineffective, to really take away some of their outside receivers. Like, they did a really good job matching up against Georgia and making it very hard for them to score and drive and do things, especially in that first half. Like, it was crazy how they were just kind of on them. And then, you know, Georgia's going Georgia and they got better. They found some ways and did some good adjusting in the second half. But man, like, this is one of those games where you're just like, I don't know, because if some of your star receivers decide not to play, it could be ugly. It could be.
I would be more. Yeah, I'd be more worried about my defensive stars not playing, because I don't think that even with, I mean, I understand the backup comes back from protocol, whatever, and he's done a good job, but, you know, they're not the offense they were. So right now they're riding that defensive wave, and if those guys start bailing, then you're going to have some issues. But no, I do think it's interesting to say, and I will say this before we move on to the next point. You know, they did run this whole thing through the old BCS system, and interestingly enough, the BCS would have picked it the same way. That Alabama would have been fourth by half a point. Yeah, so
there was no, like, just because of the way, like, because I always joke when people say, well, strength of schedule. Strength of schedule is subjective because people vote, and people vote all the time. When you want to make sure you have somebody get a better strength of schedule, you just vote them in the top 25 and then vote them up to 15. Like, but isn't that team, like,
but that's what we're talking about, how manipulative college football is. I mean, even that aspect, you know, do me a solid, bump us up if, you know, I mean, it's just like, it's crazy right now.
Well, it's funny that it's the gap in logic there. If Florida State is without their quarterback, and that's why they got knocked down from 4 to 5, why aren't they below Georgia? I mean, isn't Georgia theoretically better than a Florida State team with the backup? Like, the committee's logic in and of itself makes no sense that Georgia is somehow worse than Florida State. The other thing is, you'd like to see Florida, because they're getting the backup quarterback back, and he's a functional, capable guy. Man, that's got to sting. He'd have 3-4 weeks, first team reps. Like, you feel like they would have had a puncher's chance. The true freshman kid, that wasn't going to work. But like you said, Marlon, that wasn't going to work. But they won that game. I mean, they dominated a good Louisville team. Louisville's offense all year long was like top 20 in the country. I guess winning with defense just isn't as sexy as winning with Jalen Milroe.
Not in today's football, it's not.
No, they want to see points, and they didn't want to see what happened with TCU. Right? They already played the whole game last year when they put TCU in, and TCU knocked off Michigan, and then they got blown out in the title game, like to the point where people turned it off. Like you got there, like I watched maybe the first 5 minutes. Oh, this is a blowout. I'm not going to be here long. And by the second quarter, I'm like, I'm done with this. Like there's no way TCU should be in this game. The championship game was Ohio State and Georgia, in my opinion, last year. So they were trying to really give college football fans 2 great games. And then you get you wanted to have 3 great games, right? So you wanted to have that matchup between Ohio State or Michigan, Alabama, and then you're going to have Washington and Texas and say, okay, let the chips fall where they may, and then you'll get a great championship game. And so that's what they were doing. That they were tasked to really make sure that you don't have a drop off, and you don't lose money, you don't lose revenue, you don't lose viewership. Yeah. So that's why Florida State kind of got put in that situation, because it was going to be a coin toss, and really it was more on the side that they couldn't score enough points. Like their defense would have slowed Texas down had they been matched up against Texas. They would have slowed them down, but Texas could score points, and Texas defense is formidable as well. So now you're like, okay, well, if Florida State can't score enough points in Texas and score 30 points at the drop of a hat, is this going to be a 30-17 game, a 45-17 game? We don't want that. We want viewership. We want people to tune in and watch the entire game. So that's kind of also one of their thinking. I mean, it's always been a flawed system. I mean, and Jerry and I could probably go off on so many different tangents, but I think America and particularly Florida State fans and people who don't play, who have never played college football, finally understood that college football and all their amateurism and everything they say about it, it's about dollars and cents. And I think people finally realize, like, money talks. Like it's just the same as the NFL. Money talks in college football. And you have the haves and the have-nots. And unfortunately, Alabama has been the have, and there was going to be an SEC team, and there was not going to be any scenario where they left out an SEC team unless Jordan Travis didn't get injured. Then you would have had to make the case of we're just going to go ahead and pick it and not choose Georgia, Alabama, and Florida State would have had to been in there regardless. But yeah, it's crazy to even think about the NCAA. And I don't know if you saw the news today about their new proposal, Jerry. Have you seen their new proposal about what they should do in NIL?
I think that it's coming. I mean, really, to be honest with you, the only way to regulate NIL, because NIL is not going away. The only way to regulate it is what we would call a collective bargaining agreement, right? Some sort of work agreement between the players, the universities, and the NCAA. Now, the interesting part to me is going to be this, not the fact that this is going to happen, because I've always believed it is going to happen. I believe a succession of the major big, 25, 35 schools was always going to happen. Why have conference realignment the way you're having it if you weren't trying to position yourselves to eventually do that? And I think the theory of the Big Ten and the SEC doing that eventually will come to fruition. The interesting part to me was, and I thought this was well played by the NCAA, and I think it was a power move by the NCAA. Mm-hmm. To me, the question mark's always been, is the NCAA going to be the ones to regulate this, or are the teams that break away going to start their own deal and regulate it themselves? That, to me, is where the interesting aspect of this is, because I think the NCAA is a powerless governing body. I think they're powerless. They will do what the presidents and the schools say to do. They really don't have power. Are they going to be the ones to start this and say, okay, yeah, we're going to have – I don't know. I mean, I really don't. So, because if they do it, there's going to have to be money shared with them. And we all know that all this jockeying of teams and conferences was to isolate the most money we can to the smallest number of teams, right? So why do we want to include you if we can do it ourselves? So that's where it's going to be interesting.
It is going to be interesting.
It feels like the NCAA is trying to get out ahead of this, right?
Yes.
And
it's about time. It's about time. Like, they've had 30 years to get out ahead of this. Yeah. Like, we're in this state because of them. Like, had you thought about it, they would have already come up with something like this. And because think about it, when we were in school, all we wanted was an increase in the stipend that we got on a monthly basis. We didn't even really care about name, image, and likeness yet. Like, we were just starting to play NCAA college football.
Hell, Marlon, I'm so old. I don't even think we got a stipend. I just was happy I got some like free shorts and some T-shirts,
right?
And a place to eat food, man.
I think I got what? We got like $70 a month that they had to give you after you're like, look, like $70. Hey, this is not enough to get a pizza when the study hall's like,
now my son's at Tulsa getting, they can pay him to get his grades that he's supposed to get anyway. I'm like, are you kidding me?
So Jerry, when Marlon and I first started this show in the fall, we talked quite a bit about his time at Ohio State and how things have changed. You go into a school like Tulsa, were the rules even different for you there than they were for Marlon at Ohio State? Like back in the day, was because resources were clearly, more limited at a school like Tulsa than Ohio State.
Yeah. And they still are. I mean, it's basically the same resources and everything are the same that they were back then. It's just at a grander scale, right? I mean, the price of things has gone up, but it's the same thing. I mean, the interesting part about Tulsa is when you look at it, Ohio State, and what do you, Marlon, like 35,000 undergrads or something like that? They go to Ohio State?
Something like
about
that.
Maybe, that big.
Maybe
I mean,
closer to 50, maybe closer to 50.
Maybe closer to 50. Tulsa's the smallest Division I school in the country that plays Division I football. We've got about 3,200 undergrads on campus. One in 17 people that walk on that campus is a college athlete. So that just shows you the scale of the Tulsas of the world and what they have to go through to try to, make ends meet, to be able to put teams on the field. And then what the Ohio States have to go through, or what they don't have to go through, is because of the money that they have. So when you start talking about this, NIL and all this, it just separates so many places, because there's a lot of places out there, smaller schools, or maybe schools in the Sun Belt or schools in Conference USA or the AAC, that are trying to play the same game that the Blue Bloods like Ohio State and Penn State and Notre Dame and Alabama and all those schools play. It's something that can be done for a little bit. Is it sustainable over time for those schools? Probably not. So I have, and I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I've got, firsthand knowledge of it, and I'm sitting here watching all this going, I don't know how we're going to compete with everybody else. And, it's sad, but it's something that probably has to happen, because what'll happen is when the separation finally takes hold, then everybody will be where they're supposed to be, and the competition level will be more even across the board. The games will be better, and all of those things. But yeah, I mean, think about that. Think about the number of people that go to Ohio State at a place like Tulsa, like 3,500 undergrads.
It's 47,000 at Ohio State.
There you go, 47,000.
Yeah.
So think about this. Wow. Think about this, guys, real quick, and I'll let you go. I'll let you go with what you were going to say. Okay, 47,000. So probably what? 5, I don't know, 10, if you just want to go simple math, 12, around 12,000 graduate a year, maybe. Okay. Yeah. 12,000 alums, or just say 10,000 people graduate from Ohio State University a year. So it would take the University of Tulsa, who has graduating classes of probably less than 1,000, right?
Right.
How many years does it take us to build up to that many? You know what I'm saying? So when you look at the grand scheme of things, they're like, well, go out and raise money. Okay, I'll raise money, but we're pumping out, 600-700 a year. They're pumping out 10,000. I mean, so you could it's just amazing the scale of all of it and how it all looks. So yeah, something's got to be done, because it's just, I enjoy, like, we flew to Washington. The very first play of the game, I'm a proud dad, because my son's a starting defensive end at Tulsa, and they decided to run the back out in the flat real quick and not block him. And he comes shot out of a gun first play of the game and just yard sailed Penix. It hit him about, now it was a flag. Now, granted, it was a flag. It was a flag. And I got a picture of him after the game. Penix and him are laughing. And it's this candid picture. And if I can get him with it blown up, I said, what did he say to you? He goes, he asked me why I had to hit him so hard. So anyway, it's just, those games are great for us because it raises money for us. I think we made about $1.75 million to fly to Seattle and play Washington this year. in an amazing environment and the sailgating and all that. But it's hard on a university like us to play that team and then the next week come back and play Oklahoma at home. We have to do those things to make that money, right?
Right.
So, yeah. I mean, one thing I hope this does when they finally get all these separation figured out is that we can get everybody on an even playing field. Everybody can be where they are, and we can get, good competition back again on the fields.
Marlon, you talk about Ohio versus everybody, right? It's always Ohio State versus everybody. I think Jerry's got you trumped here with Tulsa and his 3,800 total enrollment.
Hey, a couple years ago, the team T-shirt a couple years ago was Tulsa versus everybody. Yes, so that was a
You definitely got us beat. Ohio State versus everyone turned into the hate, right? It's just more of like you love to hate on Ohio State, and some of that is just us, like the way we kind of do our things, right? Like it's the Ohio State University. Now, I will say, yes, we were founded in 1870. It's in our name. Like it's not like we're trying to be elitist. It's the Ohio State University. We just put an emphasis on the.
Well,
right?
we're learning a little bit about the Ohio State way down here in Tulsa because our head coach this year is Kevin Wilson. So
nice.
Former offense coordinator from Ohio State. So, well traveled. He was at Oklahoma, a couple other places, Northwestern. But yeah, so that the new head coach this year was Kevin Wilson. First year, just got done trying to build a program. So
does that mean y'all interested in Kyle McCord? Y'all need a quarterback because he's in the portal.
Yeah, I'm sure we're interested in him. Do we have the money to pay Kyle McCord? That's the question. Would he take coupons? I mean, I'll get him some what's that? Some Chick-fil-A coupons or something.
Hey, now don't sleep on Chick-fil-A. I love me some Chick-fil-A.
Now, Marlon, it's funny, Marlon. 3 weeks ago, you bit my head off for calling him Mac Jones 2.0, and now all of a sudden, now that he's no longer wearing your colors, now all of a sudden,
well, no.
I'm disappointed.
Read between the lines, he was trying to shop him, so he was trying to get rid of him.
I'm trying to get it. Listen. At the end of the day, you called him Mac Jones 2.0. I laughed, right? Like I just joked and smiled, like because what I wanted to see is him turn the page, right? And so I think as a fan base, we have been spoiled with really elite quarterback play at Ohio State. Like when you think about it, we've had some really good, like some guys that maybe weren't going to their game wasn't going to translate into the NFL. But, when you think about it, going back to JT Barrett, and then you go to Dwayne Haskins, and then, you talk about, we ended up getting Chicago quarterback, went 13 overall. So Justin Fields. And then you get CJ. Like we've had really good elite quarterback play that elevates everyone around you. And then everybody's like, well, who's Kyle McCord, right? Like he didn't really get an opportunity. He was a 5-star recruit. Nobody knew how good he was. And then you kind of see like he didn't take the steps that you thought and that people were hoping. And so I don't know if that's on him. I don't know if that's an indication on just the way staff changed, the turns over, and who's coaching, who's developing. But at the end of the day, it's one of those things. It's a double-edged sword, right? Like, if you believe the stories are true, I know he went to the portal. There's a rumor out there floating that says he and his dad went and talked to Ryan Day, and they wanted some assurances that he was going to be the starting quarterback next year, and that they weren't going to go get a quarterback in the portal. And Ryan Day said he couldn't guarantee either one of those things. He needed to come in and compete. And if he wanted a starting job, he wanted a starting job. And they were definitely going to bring in people in the portal, right? So he decided to leave. So on one way, it's okay. Do you really want somebody who's supposed to be the leader of your franchise and leading those guys there to not have a mentality of, I don't care who you bring in, I'm going to beat them out, right? So that's the first mindset. That's the first thing. That's the first red flag. The second is also, it's kind of one of those things on the other side of it is, did he want to face up all the pressure and all the backlash that comes with being at that university and the expectations come along with that and all the negativity that comes along and the people saying he sucks and he shouldn't be there anyway and get rid of him and bench him and put this person in. So it's kind of one of those like, okay, now Buckeye fans, if we don't get somebody better, then be careful what you wish for, because it could also go the opposite way for us. And so we could still be stuck in the mire of okay quarterback play, because he had a decent season. If you look at any other school, he 11-1, 3,000 yards passing. That's a good season. But at Ohio State, because they didn't win and beat their arch rival and their arch nemesis, it's not a good season. which is crazy to think about that in this big scheme of things of letting it lay out on the field and play. You play the games like he did everything he was supposed to. It's not his fault that the guard missed the block and he got hit as he was making a throw. Now you could argue about the first read against that Michigan game when he threw the interception, when you pulled out on the RPO and you like, I'm throwing here no matter what, because Will Johnson had inside coverage the entire time. Like your first read, like, I can't make that throw here, hand the ball off. So yeah, you can question that decision making, but it's going to be interesting to see who we get to replace Kyle McCord. Now we do have a quarterback coming in that's starting in January, which is crazy to me to think about how kids are graduating early, Jerry. Like we would have never thought about that. Graduate early to go and start in January to be a part of the spring ball and get a head start on being a part of the organization and being a part of the unit. Well, we can call it organization, being a part of the organization, the university.
No, I agree. I mean, it's become it's widespread. Now, me personally, I'm gonna hang out, go to prom, and go hang with my boys for a little while before I show up. I mean, that's just me. But no, I think talking about the quarterback situation, one thing that is interesting, and I did hear Ohio State in on this guy. I can't remember his name, obviously, but the Washington State quarterback, all right, he hits transfer portal. Think about this. They said in a 24-hour period, Ohio State was one of the teams. He had over 10 deals, over 10 offers for $1 million plus in 24 hours. So right now we've set the market, transfer portal quarterback, starting experience, previous starter at P5 school, $1 to $2 million. It's crazy.
It's free agency.
Cam Ward, Jerry. His name's
Ward. Yes,
Cam
exactly.
Ward. And on that same vein, Riley Leonard, the Duke quarterback, is visiting Notre Dame tomorrow.
Dude, seriously, is there a more Notre Dame quarterback than
the Duke quarterback?
He's just like the last guy that was there, but he's got lighter hair and no beard. I mean, they're like the same guy, right?
Yeah, Sam Hartman was like the living embodiment of Jesus. I mean, he literally looked like Jesus. So he was the perfect Notre Dame quarterback. Jerry, talk to me real quick. Could you imagine going into the head coach at Tulsa with your son and looking for assurances of a starting job next year? Just doesn't seem like something that you would do. I can't imagine. If that's true about Kyle McCord's dad, it's a tough look, right?
That's because Jerry played. Jerry understands what competition's about. And if you don't have competition on your football team, you're not going to be very good, because if the guy starting's not worried about the guy behind him, then you've got issues, believe me.
Right.
So no, we wouldn't. They all wonder where I am. Jerry's sparse. I don't, I'm 20 minutes down the road. They all know where I am, but I'm never around. I mean, I go to games. It's cool that my boy gets to come home and, walks in with his laundry or whatever and wants some food and some money and all that. But we love to see him. But seriously, I mean, I let him do his thing. He deserves to have his journey the way he wants to do it without me being involved.
What's it like watching him play big time college football? Is it more nerve-wracking than when you played?
I had a buddy tell me how awesome he's. Man, you're gonna love it. Man, your son's playing D1. Dude, it's the most nerve-wracking damn thing I've ever been a part of. I mean, it is nerve. I mean, you're nerved up because, and Marlon will tell you, I mean, it's like a double curse, man. Like, unfortunately, you have no control over what's going on, but you also know how everything is made. So it's like you've got the inner workings of all of it. You can see it. You know what's going on. You know everything about it, and you can't control it. And, man, it's wild. It's wild. It's a nerve-wracking deal, but it is cool to see him playing, living his dream, having success. He's turned out to be a good ball player. He's something else. Got a big motor.
That doesn't surprise me from the way that you play, Jerry. It doesn't surprise me at all. Let's look ahead to the matchups here. The Rose Bowl, obviously, the prime spot, the one Marlon fell short on a couple times in his college career, wanting to get to. I tweak him every once in a while here, Jerry.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Sure. Michigan, Alabama is about as high profile for a bowl game as you could possibly get. So that clearly is the marquee game here. What do you guys see there? Marlon, you clearly know the Michigan team really well. We're going to have Jay Reamersma back on before that game to preview it like he did for the Michigan-Ohio State game. What do you guys see in that game? And then obviously Texas-Washington.
Well, first of all, when this whole thing went down with Alabama and Florida State being slighted, I said to one of my coworkers, one of my good buddies, I said, "Look, man," I said, "now's the time to go to Vegas and put it all on Alabama because
Right?
now they got their motivation. Saban's got his motivation, dude. It's Alabama by a million, right? I would not be shocked if they win it all. This game will be. These are one of those games to me that always comes down to big turnovers, crazy plays, because you got two teams that are, while they're a little bit different, the foundations built by the head coaches are so similar. Ball control, great defense, don't make mistakes, don't turn it over, no penalties. So I expect it to be a really good football game, a tough football game. I felt well, at least before Iowa, but then again, I guess I can't really judge anybody on Iowa because their damn defense is so good. But
Yes.
I did give the edge offensive line wise, and all that with Michigan. I love Corin, man. Gosh, dang, he's a good back. I love him. He's physical. He gets downhill. I'm not a big fan of the quarterback, JJ McCarthy. I'm not a huge fan of his. I hate to use the term game manager because I think that's also slights these guys a little too much. He's a good quarterback. He makes plays when he needs to. He's not flashy. He's exactly what you would figure Harbaugh would have as a quarterback. But, that Michigan defense plays downhill. They get after it. So I think it'll be a good game. I think it's going to come down to who turns it over, who gives up that big play. And obviously, both teams are going to be extremely prepared. And the thing that I'm looking forward to the most out of this, guys, is the press conferences by both head coaches. I mean, there's going to be some hella quotes coming out of this thing. Believe me.
That's true, Marlon. Before you give your preview, I'd like to remind anybody listening, and you'll remember this, Marlon. I had Alabama 6.5-1 3 weeks ago. Remember, that was my pick. I said they're the long shot to win it, and if they get in, they'll be favored. If they get into the 14 playoff, and I think now they are the betting favorite. They're only a 1.5 point underdog against Michigan. So, what do you see there, Marlon? And can you imagine the scene at that game? Like what a scene that's going to be on New Year's Day. It's cool that the two playoff games are on New Year's Day this year as well.
Finally, yeah, I'm loving the fact it's going to be on New Year's Day. I think we said this because I found a stat that was crazy early in the season. We talked about Alabama being a dark horse and to watch out for them if they make it to the SEC championship, because in 2015, you have to go all the way back to 2015 to find at a point in time where Alabama was not ranked in the top 10. And that was 2015, the year they also actually won a national championship.
Wow.
So you talk about consistency and how good their program is. They ended up having the same blueprint of 2015. They ended up getting knocked out of it. They lost a game to Texas, got knocked out of that top 10. But you knew they had a gauntlet to go through going into the SEC. And if they made it to the championship, you knew they were going to get in. So I clearly expect Alabama to win this game. And it's not that I just don't like Michigan. I mean, I really don't like Michigan. That is true. but when you think about the matchup, Alabama defensively can match up, and I would even give their defensive line an edge against Michigan's offensive line here. I think that's going to be where it's won. Talk about the trenches and where you start, right? Like those are all the keys, right? Can you protect the quarterback or can you affect the quarterback? And so Michigan wants to run first. That's what they want to do, and I think Alabama is going to be really good and stout against that run. Now we're going to find out because the games have to be played on the field, so we're going to find out. I agree with you. I think. I don't know how good JJ McCarthy is. And I know when we played him last year, we made him look like an all-star and made him look like he was like the best thing coming.
Right.
And the new Joe Namath, the new Joe Montana, the new Joe Theismann. You could put any moniker on it you want, like
Joe Burrow, Joe whatever.
He carved us up, right? So I don't think Alabama's going to. I think Alabama's corners are going to be physical with their receivers. So it's going to be interesting to see if it comes down to them having to rely on JJ McCarthy's arm. Can he do it? Because up until this point, he hasn't had to do that. He just had to manage the game, really just protect the ball. And when they really took an opportunity to try to open up their passing game this year, he threw 3 picks against Bowling Green. Like Bowling Green picked him off 3 times. So if you're thinking about that, like Alabama secondary is salivating on, hey, he will make mistakes. He will put the ball in harm's way at times, and I think they're going to look forward to it. It's going to be a great game. I think that's going to be the best game of the two to watch on that game, because it should be some it'll be it could be a blowout on Alabama's end if they just stymie kind of like what TCU was able to do, come out the gate early against them. Alabama could really come out of the gate early with them. And then you have Jalen Milroe. That's the X factor in all of this, because Michigan's going to try to rush. They're going to try to get after it. But if they're not sound in their rush lanes, Jalen Milroe will kill them just by running. He's a quarterback that he doesn't seem too phased by throwing turnovers, and he'll give you one. Like he'll turn the ball over. He'll make a bonehead play at times, but he can also rush and hit you for 150 and 2 touchdowns and throw for 250 and 3 more touchdowns. So I think Alabama definitely has the edge, and I would say they automatically have the mental edge, because if you saw when they laid it out, and if you, I don't have the clip, but I watched their body language. They're like, oh, not Alabama.
Like, oh no, not them.
They're like, we don't want to play them.
Jalen Milroe. You know, Jerry, we've talked quite a bit about Jalen Milroe on the show, and he's almost like he's like Josh Allen in college, right? He's just strap it up, and he's a roller coaster ride on every play, and it can be the most amazing play you've ever seen. Michigan really hasn't faced a quarterback like him, right? In the Big Ten, there's no one that's anywhere close to his athleticism and how dynamic he is. I just have a hard time seeing them be able to slow down the Alabama offense if Jalen is on that day. You watched Washington in person, Jerry. You know, what are your impressions of them? And I'm sure you've seen a bunch of Texas being close to them. What are your thoughts on that game?
Michael Penix Jr. is the real deal. The only thing that concerns me about him is going to be his durability factor. He's kind of he's a slightly built dude. He's not super big, but anticipation with the football, reading routes, he can improvise. He's accurate. And then between him and I believe it's Nguze, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. I might not be pronouncing it correctly. Number one, their outside receiver is probably the best receiver in football.
Roman Duzier.
I know you got a big thing for Marvin Harrison Jr. Okay, I get that, and he's right there too. This guy is. I guess I could say this: they're two different type of players. I think Marvin's probably more the fluid type dude. He's one of those kind of molds receivers that just like goes and gets it right. Explosive, big, physical. And then they just got their other receiver. His name slips my mind. He just came back from being hurt and made a big impact on the Pac-12 championship game. Excuse me. I like Washington a lot. I think they're underrated defensively. When you look at them, you know they should give up a lot of points. They've played Oregon really well. Their offensive line's crazy experienced. Penix usually doesn't get pressured. If he does get pressured, he gets rid of the ball. He doesn't give up a lot of sacks. They can run the football. And I love the head coach is I believe it's Dewar. His message is good.
Kalen DeBoer.
I like them. I'm hoping that they can beat Texas. Of course, I'm in Oklahoma, so nobody likes Texas down here. Obviously, Texas has Quinn Ewers. Ewers is probably, of all the quarterbacks in the Final Four, is really, really streaky. He had early success against Oklahoma State, which allowed him to get going, and that's usually how he is. If he has some early struggles, it usually takes him a while to get back into it, or he just falls apart. The thing about Texas that Marlon like is you talked about Alabama's front defensive line. They got some absolute freaks up front and their defensive tackles. They can play defense. They can get after you. And that's where I worry about the Washington side of the ball. I'm not saying Oregon's not physical. They are. And I'm not even saying Texas is like this, Michigan-type team. But do you make them one-dimensional? Do you take away things? Because they are a very timely running team. They can pop one, but I don't know if they can run the ball against Texas. I mean, they got some cats, and so it'll be interesting. I mean, if Washington can confuse Ewers and give him some problems early, his confidence goes down. They'll have issues. If Texas is able to stop that run and jam that thing up to where they really make them one-dimensional, are those outside guys going to be able to get open and make plays? This one, to me, I think this game is going to go one way or the other when I look at it. It just has that feel like it's going to be big on one side. I don't know who. It could be either or, but I don't know if this is going to be as tight of a ball game as like we think Michigan and Alabama is going to be.
I agree. I think if you look at how Washington has always played, They want to have shootouts. Like they're
Right.
okay. Like, hey, if you score, we're just going to try to come back down and score. So I think, to your point, I think Michael Penix Jr. is the real deal. I knew he was a real deal 2.5 years ago, 3 years
In
ago,
Indiana.
when he was at Indiana, and he lit
Yep.
us up. When he came, I
Yeah.
was like, man, this dude is the real deal. And then he happened to tear his ACL and then hit the
Right.
transfer portal. And I'm like, look, this dude is the truth. And they should
Yeah.
have beat us that game, by the way. I'll go ahead and say that, Buckeye Nation. Y'all know it's true. We got lucky there. But that's the case. I think their passing attack, especially their receivers, with the Duzier, and I think it's Jalen McMillan, was the
Yes,
guy
it
who
is
was
McMillan,
injured
yes.
that came
Yep.
back, right?
Yep,
So
it
Jalen
is.
McMillan came back, and they looked like a whole different team. Like,
Right.
now you had options. They like to run the ball with Johnson. He went over 1,100 yards rushing, so great feat for him. But I agree. I think Texas's front is that what they were able to do against Alabama when they went head to head down there. I was like,
Yes.
whoa, like you hadn't
Yeah.
seen that from Texas in a
Mm-mm.
long time. Like, man, they got some studs up there. Now, I do think Alabama has kind of solidified their offensive line a little bit better. So
Right.
that if it turns out to be an Alabama-Texas rematch, I wouldn't mind that at all. But when you look at I think Washington's going to want to score points, and they're going to try to make it a track meet. They're going to do what they did against Oregon and spread them out and say, okay, how can we scheme easy throws for Penix and get the one-on-one matchups? And let's see if your safeties can cover. If we go stack trips like they did against Oregon, can your safeties cover? Like, so I think they're going to take a page from that. I mean, when you think about it, because I'm always going to take it back to Ohio State. Ohio State had Ewers, like, he was on our roster.
Yeah, he was.
And he
was
didn't
the
beat out
first.
CJ.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't he the first high school NIL guy? That's why he reclassified or whatever. Yeah,
he reclassified, had all that money coming in, and he didn't beat out CJ, and we understand why. With CJ going to number 2 all over pick, but had Ohio State been able just to convince him to stay, like, imagine we wouldn't even be having this conversation of would Ohio State be there, because he is playing at an elite level. And so I think, but then again, I don't know if he turns out to be the player that he is now at Ohio State, right? So you got to give kudos to how he's grown and the type of player that he turned into. But he can light it up. He can make the throws. He can do some really good things. It comes down to their front, as you mentioned. And then sometimes they just give up like stupid plays on defense. Like, can they be sound on the back end? Like, sometimes you're like, I don't understand that call. Like, why would you even put yourself in that situation when you know a touchdown beats you and you're running an all-out blitz and all-man coverage, and you're leaving them one-on-one? Like, why would you do that? That's just kind of some of the things they do. It's kind of some of the things they do at One Bills Drives. Oh, sorry. I digress.
Well done. Well said, Marlon. Before we wrap this up, Jerry, a couple questions. You being in Oklahoma, we talked quite a bit about Big Ten football and, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. I love Notre Dame and everything that comes with that, both positive and negative. Yeah, well, my dad gave me no choice as a kid. Can you talk to us about how basically everybody in the middle of the country hates Texas, other than people that are from Texas? Like, that's the big villain, right? They're the Yankees of kind of the Midwest, right?
Yes, exactly. I mean, we actually the Big 12 conference actually made a rule about the horns down in games being a penalty because it was taunting. If you see any kid in high school when he commits to Oklahoma, the very first thing he does is horns down. I mean, so it doesn't matter who it is. The hatred is all at Texas, and even more so than Oklahoma State, which is their in-state rival that they are leaving this year. Oklahoma State stays back to the Big 12. Oklahoma and Texas go to the SEC. But no, it's one of the coolest games. You think about this. It's one of the coolest games in America, tradition-wise, and it ranks up there with Army, Navy, and some of these other games like the largest tailgate or cocktail party in the country when Georgia and Florida play in Jacksonville, right? You've got all these people from Oklahoma. They drive across the border into Texas, and you have all the people from Austin that come up, and everybody says, well, it's a home game for Texas because it's in the state of Texas. Well, that Cotton Bowl is about halfway. If you really look at it by how the crow flies, it's about halfway in between both schools. The game is played in a neutral stadium. It's played at the Cotton Bowl during the Texas State Fair. So the Texas State Fair is going on. These two groups of people come in to watch this game, And if you take the aerial shot every time, right at the 50-yard line, it is completely split. Half the stadium is burnt orange, half the stadium is crimson and cream. And if you ever have a chance to go, please go, because it's one of the coolest experiences that you can get into as far as, going to a college football game. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of OU hatred towards Texas and vice versa, but it's all in good spirit, as they say.
Sure. One more for you, Jerry. Mike Elko just became the coach at Texas A&M, and Marlon and I talked about this last week. Why are they so weird there, man? Like what's going on down there? Like the midnight yell practice and all the swaying and chanting and like, man, college football, people are passionate everywhere, but it feels cult like there. Tell me I'm wrong.
If I'd have known this and you were going to ask me this question, I'd have called up my nephew and my niece, who both have recently graduated from Texas A&M, and they could have come up and gave you the gig 'em signal with their ring on, and they could have talked to you all about it. So yes, obviously there's some quirkiness down there. I don't know if you've ever seen the Texas A&M Fighting Aggie Band, but it's one of the coolest things you can see live. I saw them in the Alamo Bowl, I don't know, a while ago when they played. Well, it's been quite a while ago because it was Texas A&M, Penn State down there, and Fran was still coaching at A&M. So it's been a while, but they are different. I don't want to get into this, man. I don't need to start any family. I don't need to start any family wars at all. But
gotcha. Well, sorry to put you in that spot, man.
No, but what I will say about that place, it's interesting, and I think this is where the issues maybe lie with them, and we're starting to see some issues at other places. This NIL stuff is causing issues, not necessarily with the players in the locker room. It's the guys that are investing the money into the players to get them there. There's where some issues lie. When a guy pays $200,000 and gets a guy a car, and his guy's not starting on Saturday, he wants to know why, right? So that's where a lot of this. And when you got these schools, this is why I think, and I don't know what it's like at Ohio State, but I figured it's probably maybe similar. But when I look at Alabama and I look at Michigan, one thing Saban has done, he's like, look, during the season, you're not doing any NIL stuff. You're not doing advertising. You're not doing anything. During the season, you're playing football. This is what everybody's getting. If you got these side deals on your own, whatever, but you're not getting any more from us, everybody gets the same thing. Everybody's treated the same. And I think the problem is when you look at some of these joints like A&M and stuff, there's so many rogue deals that it's kind of lost control of things. But I think that's why Alabama continues to do what they do. There's a lot of other places that are doing the same thing. I mean, yeah, we're going to do NIL, but this is what you're going to get. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. I mean, it's that simple. But, yeah, so A&M needs to rein some of that in, I think. But, man, yeah, they are weird, believe me.
It's like Friday Night Lights, right? The TV show. There was the guy Buddy Garrity who was like the booster for the Dillon Panthers, and he's just a sketchy car salesman. And that's what I picture like every Texas A&M booster to be, is a guy like Buddy Garrity from Friday Night Lights. I don't know why. So
of course, and you were taking the Friday Night Lights. Like I think I don't know if you saw. I think there was a guy on Twitter from Texas A&M that talked about how everybody thought all these guys were making millions of dollars in NIL. And he's like, we haven't gotten paid. I to your point, I think when you allow it to become the wild, wild west at certain institutions and guys can go out and negotiate their own deals, sometimes the deal isn't as good as you think it is. And so when you're allowing an 18-year-old kid to sign a contract without any oversight, without any lawyer taking a second look at it, that's where you see guys get penalized. They don't get the money they think, or the guy that's in the NFL that's now disputing his contract that he entered into because it said you had to pay him so much money out of his NFL earnings.
10%.
All those things, like, you're like, dude, for how long? Like, this is crazy.
Right.
So those things like that happen. And I think that, but again, not the bash on the NCAA, but they could have alleviated this mess had they just had the foresight to say, we need to step in and put some parameters around it. I mean, I did a speech when I was at Ohio State years and years ago on why college athletes should be paid. And the first comment I got after for somebody asking questions was, you're freaking going to the NFL. Like, why do you even care? I'm like, because it's not for me. It's for the dudes that
Right.
don't go to the NFL. It's for the guy that tore his ACL and is going to have lifetime medical issues with that knee going forward. But until the ACA, it was considered a pre-existing injury, and so he had to cover it all on himself because the university says you're no longer a student here, so we don't have to cover it. So that's why I was advocating back then we need to fix the system because the system is broken. And so now we're at this point, and I don't know how you really fix it because the genie's out of the bottle. Money's out there. Money's always been there. Now you can legally give them the money without having to give it in bags, a la Reggie Bush and even some of the guys I played with. But I digress. My only question I have, because I know we're getting close on time, because I think it's pretty cool that you went to Tulsa. Your son's now at Tulsa. So I want to hear the similarities of your time recruiting when you got recruited to go to Tulsa, and what was the difference of when he got recruited? Like, what was similar, what was different? Because it had to be a pretty cool experience of when you're thinking of going through, like, I went through some of these things and now he's going through some of these things, but what was similar and what was different?
Well, the biggest difference is that his recruiting year fell right in the middle of COVID.
Mm.
So his recruiting experience absolutely sucked because he could not go anywhere. Everything was locked down. He couldn't go anywhere. He couldn't go to camps. He was invited to camps all over the place. I mean, Stanford, Wake, you name it. He was invited to camps and he wasn't able to go. And then you go ahead and you're like, well, let me go to this. For instance, he had an offer from the Naval Academy and the United States Military Academy, Army. He first felt that he wanted to go to Army, so he committed to Army first, and before he had a Tulsa offer. And he's like, okay, guys, when can I come up and see the place? And they're like, you can't. They're like, what do you mean I can't? Well, you can't. The government has it all shut down. COVID, you can't come. And then some other stuff happened, a whole nother story that fell through. So he decided to decommit and he ended up going to Tulsa. But, I think the biggest thing between when I was recruited and when he was recruited is everything now is initiated through electronic devices. It's all initiated through social media. It's initiated through contact through phones. Recruiting is done through phones now. 99% of the time they see clips of players on phones. They go into Twitter and see highlights on phone. Everything is done. When I was recruited, the coach had to come to your school to see you.
Right.
That's how he came to see you. When the coach walked in and said, hey, Mark Thomas is here from Tulsa. He wants to see you. Go down to the coach's office. That was how me and another buddy of mine were getting recruited, and we just kept getting pulled out of class. Because that's how they saw you back then. There was none of this go to your phone or whatever. So over COVID, it was wild because he did just a ton of visits virtually. And I give the colleges a lot of credit because they put a lot of time and a lot of effort into these virtual tours and all the stuff they did, and you're able to meet people. And we're going to have for instance, he was recruited by Northern Iowa. Bryce Pop is the coach up there, and they're setting up player deals where you can ask the guys on the team whatever you want, and the coaches supposedly aren't in the room. All these different things. So it was wild, man. Like, we're touring Princeton. He had a Princeton offer. We're touring Princeton on the computer. Me and my son and my wife are all sitting at the table with a computer watching this deal. We're touring Princeton and we're, so it's just like it was crazy that way. It was a really odd time. And I was talking about it today to a friend because one of the things that I did, I was in the medical world. I sell medical implants, sports medicine stuff. So all the hospitals were shut down. None of us could work. Kids weren't going to school. And I was just like, I knew this was coming. And I was like, man, how's my kid going to stay in shape? How's it going to? So I went out and I had a bunch of weight. I had some bars. I went out and bought this, borrowed that, and I built a gym in my garage. And
Nice.
We called it. We had the gym in the garage, had everything we needed, had more weight than we needed, and I had kids. The first kid to hit the door was at 7:30 in the morning. Was a guy named Willie Wright, who was on the Cleveland Browns practice squad.
Nice.
And he was the first guy that lifted. And usually my son, because he liked to procrastinate and lay around. Now he loves the weight room. He's a weight room guy, but he likes to do it at night. He's kind of weird like that. Like he'd be like The Rock, like working out at like 2 a.m. He would be the last dude in at 8 at night. And I'd have kids coming through all day long. And of course we had them staggered, and we were real respective of the whole COVID thing and everything. But yeah, I mean, stuff like that. So I guess I'd say between the electronic recruiting and the in-person stuff and just how different it was for him because of COVID, it was pretty wild, pretty memorable.
Any thought, Jerry, to have him not go there because of your name, your legacy there, like him trying to live up to that?
That's a great question, and we had that conversation because I'll be honest with you, I'm not doing this to pat myself on the back, but my jersey's numbers retired there. And they have a huge wall, a mural of retired guys in their jerseys. And I was the last guy we had Steve Largent played there, had a ton of, Hall of Fame guys that had played at Tulsa. And the last guy his number retired was me. So it's kind of at the end of the wall. So when he walks out of his locker room, he sees that the last thing he sees on the wall before he makes a right to go out the door is there's his dad. And while that's cool, I was really, really cautious of that, and I was almost kind of hesitant. I told him a million times, I'm like, look, man, you gotta understand something. And he goes, Dad, he goes, I'll be fine. He goes, I've been coming to this place since I was a little kid going to watch games, and it means a lot to me to play here. And the way he's embraced that legacy and the way he goes about his business is really cool. And I've tried to tell him, I've told him, I said, if you want the 55, I said, you can come, you can have it. I said, you're gonna have to ask me for it. I said, but you can have it if you want to wear it. And he's like, nah, I'm not good enough yet to wear it. I'm like, shoot. Okay. I said, whatever. But he ends up wearing, you guys remember Dennis Bird, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys remember Dennis Bird?
Yes.
Dennis Bird is Dennis Bird is a Tulsa grad. And so Dennis wore 48 while I was here. So my son wears 48 for Dennis. So that's the number he wears. But no, we talked about it, but he's cool with it. He's embraced it, and he's done a wonderful job.
Awesome. Well, I know we're coming up on an hour, so thank you for joining us. But we can't go without you giving us your prediction on who is playing in the final championship, which two teams, and then who finally wins it all.
I'm going to go with I can't. After I ranted like a damn fool for 24 hours about Florida State, I believe it's going to be Alabama and Washington, and Alabama's going to win the national championship.
That's great.
Look it. Lord save it.
We heard it here first.
Hey, Jerry, I know the guy who runs Freezing Cold Takes, so I might send him your way if Alabama wins the championship. You might get hit up on Twitter because I know him. So we'll get you some exposure on Twitter because I got blasted last year because I said after the Bills-Vikings game that would be the last Bills loss for the rest of 2023, and of course, he saved that and put me on blast after the playoff game. And I ended up having like 700 retweets and likes from Patriots fans and Jets fans and Dolphins fans within like 5 minutes. It's the most activity my phone's ever had.
That's hilarious.
So, yeah. Well, so thanks so much, Jerry, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Marlon, thanks for good seeing you again, man. If you need anything, you know where to find me. And fellas, thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. All right. See you next week, Marlon.
All right. See you later.